looked like somebody had taken a water bottle and splattered blood.
I want to see the pictures. How did you leave my boy?
The severity of the injuries looked like a crime of passion.
In a small Louisiana bayou town, a brutal murder in a popular gay nightclub.
There was a large concern that this could be a hate crime.
Murders of this type in this neck of the woods were extremely rare.
You know, at that point, I was angry. It was horrifying.
All of his rage and everything that had happened to him just came out in one horrific crime.
In-depth, insightful, in a class of its own. It's America's leading journal, Vanity Fair. Contributing editor Adam Teicholz investigates murder at the Drama Club.
Just after 3 a.m. on December 25th, 2009, Christmas morning, the sheriff's office received a phone call from Randall Chestnut, the owner of the Drama Club, which was a gay bar here in Terrebonne Parish.
Sheriff's office.
Yes, ma'am. This is Mr. Chestnut. I own the Drama Club. My manager called me at 2 o'clock and said he was on the way home, and I haven't heard from him. I've been trying to get a hold of him.
He was concerned that the manager of that establishment, Robert LeCompte, had not returned home from work.
Randy had a role in the gay community in the Bayou that went well beyond being the owner of the Drama Club. He would take wayward gay boys in. Randy talks about Robert in the same tones you'd talk about a son. They were very, very close friends, and they had started living together a couple of years before.
Randy tried to reach Robert on his cell phone and tried to reach him at the bar, got no answer.
Randy starts getting nervous. At 3:22, Randy calls 911 to say that he's sure that something's gone wrong. Robert's not home.
It's not likely he should have been home by now. Can you check that building and make sure that it's closed?
When the deputy from the sheriff's office arrived, Robert's truck was still in the parking lot of the Drama Club.
The deputy approached the front door and found it to be unlocked. The deputy entered the building
and sees a scene of unspeakable violence. They told me it looked like somebody had taken a water bottle and splattered blood. And then he looks down and he sees the body of Robert LeCompte lying in a pool of blood.
It was obvious, even from a distance, that he had been stabbed.
And there's also a note under Robert's body, soaked in blood, with a ballpoint scrawl saying, "You gave me AIDS."
When writer Adam Teicholz travels to Louisiana to investigate, he finds that earning the locals' trust requires time and patience.
Everyone knows everybody in Houma. It's a very small place. The people weren't unfriendly, but it took my staying there for a while for anyone to start really opening up. It's culturally very different from the Due South. 1 out of every 10 families in Terrebonne Parish, according to the last census, still speaks French at home.
It is a place that has been very much dependent on the economy of the oil field. Houma has always had a rather complicated relationship with its gay people, but there is not the degree of intolerance that people might believe that a little small place in Louisiana that's peopled by roughnecks and oil field workers would have.
When word of the murder gets out, it sends shockwaves through the gay community in Houma and all of Cajun country.
Gay, straight, anyone else. Murders of this type in this neck of the woods were extremely rare.
The night of the murder, Robert was throwing a Christmas party, but it was also his birthday party, and so everyone from the gay community, and a lot of straights as well, came to the drama club to celebrate.
Me and my boyfriend were there together to wish him a happy birthday. The party was kicking. Everyone that was there that night was there for Robert.
To members of the gay community in the Bayou region, the drama club was very important. It was not just a bar. It was a community center of sorts. It was a safe place.
Like many small-town gay bars, the role of the drama club in the gay community in Cajun country just can't be overstated.
If people wanted to go out, they would go to the drama club or they would drive 70 miles or more to New Orleans.
Because the drama club is a gay bar, there was also a large concern that this could be a hate crime.
Crimes targeting gay men are all too familiar in Louisiana. The gay community had been terrorized by a killer for more than a decade.
Ronald Dominique is a serial killer who, over a period of more than 10 years, killed as many as 24 people in Louisiana.
He was a Jeffrey Dahmer-style killer, gay himself, who would take people back, rape them, and murder them.
Dominique's victims primarily were outliers.
Dominique singled out men he thought would be willing to have sex for money. If they refused, he strangled or smothered them to death.
Serial killers hide in plain sight. They do not distinguish themselves. That's why they're so effective.
Ronald Dominique, on rare occasions, had been seen at the drama club.
But just 1 year before Robert LeCompte's murder, Ronald Dominique was sent to Louisiana State Prison at Angola.
44-year-old Ronald Dominique pleaded guilty to 8 counts of first-degree murder in a deal that will allow him to spend the rest of his life behind bars.
Could the murder of Robert LeCompte be the work of a copycat killer?
The fact that there's so much blood on the body means that they have to wait until the body is moved and taken to the coroner's office in order to really be able to get a read even on what the murder weapon was.
It's a bar room. They're gonna have knives to cut up lemons and limes, if nothing else. So we started checking for them. Is there a set of knives with one missing?
The bar was searched and the murder weapon was not found.
One of the few things that investigators are able to figure out pretty quickly is that there's no sign of forced entry.
It was obvious that whoever did this was either inside the building or let inside the building.
A search of the crime scene turns up one possible motive for the murder.
I would have expected to find some cash in there, not just from being able to stock their registers, but this establishment also had video poker machines inside of it. And there was no money inside the establishment. It appeared that the motive could possibly be a robbery.
Robert's mother, Bonnie Orgeron, struggles to understand how her son's life ended in such horror, a life that began on such a special day.
Robert was born on Christmas Day, 1970. He would wake up Christmas mornings. This is all my Christmas stuff. Now where's my birthday stuff? You had to love him. Me and his dad split up when Robert was going on 10. It wasn't easy to raise him by myself. We had a lot of rough times. As Robert got older, I got meaner. Back then, in the late 70s and early 80s, nobody wants their child to be gay. Nobody.
It was a very tempestuous family, and she was sometimes physically abusive to Robert as well.
And then after a few years, I just realized he's your son. And he happens to like the same thing you like, men. And then I got to know him and things changed.
Their relationship became pretty close, actually. Robert often helped out financially. He would turn over part of his paycheck from the drama club to his mom and his sister.
Robert stood 5'2", and he didn't even weigh 100 pounds. But he had a heart that was as big as the world, you know?
He was always there for you. You needed something, I mean, anything. He would actually give you his shirt off of his back if you would need it.
In 1995, Robert LeCompte is diagnosed with HIV. Robert's reaction to the news surprises even his mother.
He acted like, oh well, that's life. I was scared he was gonna die because back then you didn't really know too much about it.
All of his friends were shocked, but it seemed like he didn't let it interfere with his positive outlook on life.
Robert refuses to hide his HIV status. And that's a big problem in a small Cajun community like Houma. Robert is fired from job after job.
And I told him, I said, you need to go find something that you can do that people are not going to judge you. And then he ran into Randy, and Randy told him about opening up the drama club, and he hired Robert to be his cleanup person, and then Robert grew to become the manager.
The club became Robert's refuge, his safe place, until that fateful Christmas morning.
The drama club did not have surveillance, so I had to start figuring out who was at the bar that night that could possibly be responsible for this. I needed to start interviewing people.
They kept asking us questions, how we know Robert. He also asked me if I knew about his HIV status. Was he open to everyone with his status? I said everyone was aware of his status.
Through those first few interviews, I established who the last group of people was in the bar.
There were 8 people left at the bar at 1:30 in the morning, and that includes Robert. 6 of the 8 people who were at the bar at 1:30 claim that they decided to head off to Waffle House.
And they talk about as they're exiting, one of the customers saying, oh, I gotta use the bathroom, leaving that customer and Robert LeCompte inside alone as everyone else left.
Did the man who returned to the drama club see something that could help identify the killer? Or was he the one who murdered Robert LeCompte? The mutilated body of Robert LeCompte is discovered at the Drama Club, a gay bar in Terrebonne Parish, Louisiana. Investigators begin questioning witnesses. 6 people remember the last man they saw with Robert.
They described a young black male with a thin build, and one of them said that he was a prior employee of that establishment. So that led me straight back to the owner. He advised me that he had only had one potential person that would have been alone with Robert LeCompte at the end of the night. He named Jarrell Young as being that person.
23-year-old Jarrell Young grew up with his brother Dante and 2 sisters, 45 minutes away from Houma, on Bayou Lafourche.
Jarrell's father left when he was young. Sometimes it was hard, but we made it through. And I raised them the best way that I could, you know.
Jarrell had a tough childhood. When Jarrell was only 5 years old and his older brother was 8 or 9, they were roughhousing, and Dante picked up a screwdriver and stabbed Jarrell near the eye. And Jarrell still, to this day, has a lazy eye.
The screwdriver injury impairs Jarrell's vision, but does not dampen his spirit.
Jarrell, he lit up the house. Jarrell was a good student, and I can always remember if the bus didn't come, he would start walking to school. I'd be like, Jarrell, you can't walk. And he's like, Mom, I can't miss school.
Jarrell Young graduates from high school in 2005 and moves to Houma. He begins to hang out at the drama club where his brother Dante takes the stage most nights.
he was coming to see his brother perform in a drag show.
Dante took on the personality of Sierra Knight and was a regular performer at the drama club. Different people in the Young family had different reactions to Dante as being out and proud.
Dante being gay, you know, that's his style. That's what he wants to be. Dante was just soft, Jarrell was hard.
Although he had never expressed any interest in guys before, Jarrell started working at the drama club and getting to know the customers there. He was starting to feel really comfortable in a way that he hadn't felt comfortable before.
It's during his time here that Jarrell Young becomes friends with Robert LeCompte.
Robert was 16 years Jarrell's senior and about 10 inches shorter. And they were always seen talking and laughing. Even after hours, they would hang out together. And people said they started hooking up as well.
Jarrell Young denies having sex or a romantic relationship with Robert. But rumors surface about Jarrell's involvement with another man, the drama club's owner.
I've heard stories that Randall Chestnut and Jarrell Young did have a relationship going on.
Jarrell now claims that Randy actually insisted on what Jarrell calls pay to play, that in order to get a good shift on a Saturday night, he would have to hook up with Randy.
Jarrell never told anyone, to my knowledge, that he was actually gay. I never heard it from his mouth.
He never showed signs of that because he was always with a girl all the time.
In 2008, when he was still working from time to time at the drama club, he starts dating a woman named Darkus Baker.
That August, Jarrell meets Darkus Baker at a local nightclub. She is 5 years his senior, but the two hit it off immediately.
Things got pretty hot and heavy pretty quick with Darkus Baker, and by November of that year, they were actually living together.
On December 26th, just 24 hours after Robert LeCompte's murder, Detective Degg brings Jarrell Young in for questioning.
I spoke with Jarrell Young in great detail for multiple hours. Jarrell Young put himself exiting the drama club with everyone else that exited at the end. He said they all got in their separate vehicles together and all drove away around the same time. I asked him, why would someone want to kill Robert LeCompte? He answered that by saying maybe someone thought he gave them AIDS. We had not discussed this note. No one should have known this other than the cops on the scene.
Terry's eyes go wide, and he thinks nobody would have used the exact same language as was on the note written, put underneath the body.
In that interview, I asked him to give a written statement on what he thought may have happened. That was to get a sample of his handwriting.
The results of the handwriting analysis were inconclusive. With zero physical evidence connecting Jarrell to the crime, Terry decides that there's just not enough to charge him.
Pathologists examine the body, hoping to find a viable clue. According to the autopsy, Robert LeCompte died between 2 and 3:30 a.m., and the fatal wounds themselves are distinct.
What was very crucial piece of information that came out of the autopsy was some of the superficial wounds showed a very distinctive shape of a star pattern. It didn't take a handyman or a mechanic who has a screwdriver in his hand every day to determine that's what it was. The severity of the injuries and the amount of injuries to Mr. LeCompte kind of looked like a crime of passion.
One of the things that they discovered pretty quickly is that he'd recently started a relationship, and it was probably the first relationship in Robert's life that was starting to get serious.
I believe they were in the beginning stages of talking to each other, and those beginning stages were not progressing very well.
The savagery of what was done indicated that there was some type of knowledge of the victim and the perpetrator.
Rumors of problems with a new boyfriend. Investigators wonder, could the murder of Robert LeCompte be the result of a jealous rage. 39-year-old Robert LeCompte is viciously murdered at the Drama Club, a gay bar in Terrebonne Parish, Louisiana. Stabbed more than 10 times with a weapon that had a distinct star-shaped point. Investigators suspect the murder is a crime of passion, and they have a suspect. Robert LeCompte's new boyfriend, 35-year-old Michael Facian.
Michael was a disc jockey. He had worked quite a bit in New Orleans. He was a Marine, and he was very proud of the fact that he served in the Corps.
Michael was around Robert's age. They'd known each other for 10 years before they actually started becoming romantically involved in 2009. A lot of people told me that he seemed more serious about Michael than he'd seemed about anyone before.
Michael was at the club earlier in the evening, but he had left.
The sheriffs also learned that he was the last person that Robert had communicated with before he died.
Now he becomes a person of interest. We obtained a search warrant and did a forensic search on Robert LeCompte's phone, and that established there was communication, texting between Robert LeCompte and Michael.
Michael texted Robert hours before his death. Investigators wonder, could Michael have returned to the club?
Michael was questioned numerous times by the authorities looking into the case.
Michael's story to us was that he was at home when this homicide occurred, and he later learned of it.
And Michael tells them that Robert was supposed to come over to his family's home Christmas morning.
He had an alibi. He was at his house when the homicide occurred.
Michael's roommate confirms that he was home by 2 a.m. before Robert was stabbed to death.
We proved that he was telling the truth. Michael had nothing to do with this homicide.
Michael Facian dies of natural causes in June 2014, nearly 5 years after Robert.
Until his own death, Michael never got over the death of Robert. He would blame himself. He would say if only he had been there, this could not have happened.
A few weeks after the murder, when there's still no new leads, people start to get ready for a long period of uncertainty and nervousness that there's still somebody out there who might be targeting the gay community in Houma.
Then, 3 months after the murder, Detective Daig receives a call from Jarrell Young's girlfriend.
There was a frantic female on the phone. It was Darkis Baker. She sounded very emotional about something. She was very hard to understand. I told her I was on my way. Darkis told me that she had discovered some text messages on Jarrell's phone indicating that Jarrell was communicating with another female.
The messages that Darkis found on Jarrell's phone were particularly intimate.
She confronted Jarrell about him possibly being in a relationship with another female.
In order to protect her family's privacy, Darkis Baker wishes to remain anonymous. Sitting in Detective Daig's patrol car, Darkis paints a very different picture of Jarrell Young. Detective Daig records their conversation.
He pulled me out of the car by my pants and he ripped my pants open and he dragged me across the cement until he got his phone back. I was screaming, call 911, call the police, and nobody came help me.
I was able to find injuries on Darkis that was consistent with the attack she described. I found some police reports where there were allegations of violence between Jarrell and Darkis.
In one of the incidents, Darkis told the sheriff that Jarrell had held a gun to her head and said that he loved her, but that he would kill her if he had to. The sheriff's report, written up after the incident, was very revealing as well. He had a sort of private room in the trailer and had a bunch of weaponry, and he showed what the sheriff called an obsession with edged weapons.
Through the multiple times I spoke to Darkus, she described Jarrell as being very physically abusive, very mentally abusive towards her.
The sheriffs found this surveillance equipment in the trailer. He claimed it was for security, but Darkus said that he used it to spy on her, and that he was incredibly controlling, that he wouldn't let her wear makeup except for him.
Jarrell's mother tells a much different story.
She broke him down a lot. He used to cry. He used to tell me, "Ma, could you just please make her go away?"
In April of 2009, there was a pretty well-documented incidents of domestic violence in which he called and claimed that he had shot her multiple times with a BB gun. And when the cops showed up, there were actually welts on her legs.
As far as I know, he was never charged with nothing Darkus was saying.
Darkus never presses charges, and a month after the most brutal of her allegations, their daughter was born. She says the reason that she had never pursued domestic violence charges against Jarrell before was because she still loved him and always had hope that they would stay together.
It was a troubled relationship made worse by financial pressures. Jarrell stopped working at the drama club in 2008 when he was offered a position in a department store. But that didn't last long.
I knew that they had money problems, and to me, he wasn't ready to be a parent.
Jarrell had a series of pretty crappy jobs. The last one that he had was cleaning out contaminated chemical tanks for an oil service company.
He told me he was working, but he had been lying and saying he was going to work, and he wasn't.
Jarrell quit his job over a week prior to this homicide, got frustrated at work and quit, just walked off the job site. He would put on his uniform and leave the house like he was going to work, leaving Darkus under the impression that he was employed the whole time.
Even though he has no job, Jarrell rents a new place just 2 months after Robert LeCompte's murder. When Detective Terry Degg asks how Jarrell has been paying the rent, Darkus tells him Jarrell used cash.
Most of it was 1s and 5s and 10s.
The landlord confirmed that he paid in small bills. All small bills was a red flag to me because you don't see a lot of transactions that big that's all in 20s and 10s and $5 bills.
But the unexplained cash and the abusive relationship are just the beginning of Darkus Baker's chilling story.
He told me that he did something bad Christmas Day.
On April 1st, 2010, the Terrebonne Parish Sheriff's Department receives a frantic phone call from Jarrell Young's girlfriend, Darkus Baker.
She says it's about that little gay boy that was murdered back in December.
Jarrell Young told her that he stole the money. He told her that he killed the manager of the gay bar in Houma for the money.
He said that the man just looked up at him and said, "Why? Why? I thought I was your friend, why?" And he just kept stabbing him.
She also told Tim that Jarrell had given her a tied-up plastic Walmart shopping bag filled with something inside, but didn't say what it was, and told her to take care of it.
He told me to burn the bag, and I told him I did, but I didn't because I didn't know what was in it. I was scared to look.
Darkus told us it was in the bottom of her closet the entire time.
Terry opens the bag, and inside he finds a bloody t-shirt.
And printed on the shirt, the Drama Club logo.
And went to the owner of the drama club, and I asked him about this shirt. And he made a comment to me about, "You found my missing shirt." So when he told me that, I went through the crime scene photos.
Terry sits down with 2 photographs. One, a photograph of the crime scene, and the other, a photograph taken from a similar perspective in the drama club before the murder. And he notices that in the one taken before the murder, there's a t-shirt hanging on the wall behind the bar that's missing in the picture taken after the murder.
So the photos themselves proved that that shirt was taken after that Christmas party.
Darcus Baker also reveals another critical piece of evidence.
Darcus informed me that Jarrell told her that he had stabbed Robert with a screwdriver.
He told me it was hanging up at the bar, and he took the shirt and he wiped the screwdriver off and he put the screwdriver in his pocket. He threw the screwdriver on Romba Road.
It turns out that that's a very good place to get rid of a murder weapon because it's right along the bayou on either side, all swampy. It'd get subsumed in the muck very quickly.
Searches were done of ditches, waterways along routes that he would have traveled. The screwdriver was never recovered.
Within hours, the sheriff's department had tracked down Jarrell's location at a bar near his mom's place and arrested him.
Officials in Terrebonne Parish have made an arrest in a Christmas Day killing. Deputies booked 23-year-old Jarrell Young with first-degree murder of a nightclub manager, Robert LeCompte.
I told him, you know, if he has something to do with it, tell the truth. You know, tell the truth.
Jarrell's story to the end is that Robert LeCompte was alive when Jarrell left that barroom. And he claims he drove straight from the drama club home with one stop in the middle at the convenience store.
Surveillance footage from Roland's Mini Mart, where Jarrell Young says he got gas, confirms his story.
The video shows Jarrell putting fuel into Darcus Baker's vehicle, goes inside the store, pays for this fuel in cash, but the time frame itself is nowhere near where it should be if he would have left when everyone else left and drove straight to that store.
We know that Robert was starting to kick everybody out and shut the club down at 1:57, but the surveillance video from the gas station was from 2:59, which means that between the time that folks left the club and Jarrell stopping to get gas, a full hour had passed.
It usually would take 15 minutes to get from Drama Club to Roland's Mini Mart on any given day or time.
When he's pinned down on how long it took him to get there, he starts talking about he was intoxicated, so he was driving very slow. I believe that excuse is exactly what it is. It's an excuse.
And there is something else in the video that catches Detective Daig's attention.
You can see that a guy approaches Jarrell and strikes up conversation. And immediately Jarrell starts looking downward at his clothing. He starts brushing his clothing off. In my opinion, it was obvious that he was checking to see if he had blood splatter or other evidence on him of the crime.
Police obtain a DNA sample from Jarrell Young. Forensic evidence they hope will connect him to the bloody t-shirt the killer used to clean off the murder weapon. Tests confirm the blood on the fabric is Robert LeCompte's. But there's one problem.
The forensic lab also reports that there's none of Jarrell's DNA on the shirt.
Jarrell Young adamantly maintains that he had nothing to do with Robert LeCompte's murder.
Jarrell definitely indicated that Darcus was lying. And he blames this homicide on a different person. He blamed it on a guy by the name of Jeremiah Washington.
Jarrell tells the sheriffs after the murder, Jeremiah Washington had come over, hung out with Darcus, and when Jeremiah came, he'd had the Walmart bag, and when Jeremiah left, he didn't.
I didn't know who Jeremiah Washington was before hearing it from Jarrell Young. His name had never surfaced in this investigation.
The suggestion that Jeremiah Washington was somehow connected to this case was a last-ditch effort by a desperate defendant to pin the crime on somebody else.
Investigators believe they have an open and shut case, until the key witness suddenly changes her testimony 2 months after she told Detective Daig the father of her child is the killer.
Darkus tells a story that's completely contradictory to what she told Terry Daig.
I remember Jeremiah putting a Walmart bag in my car, and that he had stabbed a guy, that he had some keys with him with the guy's name on the keys, and that he needed the money. It had to have been Jeremiah that put it in the vehicle because Jarrell didn't even know about the shirt.
Investigators track down Jeremiah Washington. He's in jail for another crime. But at the time of Robert LeCompte's murder, Washington was a free man.
Because of Darkus's retraction, this could really turn the tables on the prosecution.
The main witness in Robert LeCompte's murder trial just recanted her testimony. Darkus Baker now claims Jarrell Young is innocent. She says a friend, Jeremiah Washington, confessed to her that he killed LeCompte.
We pursued it like we pursued every other lead that came up pre-arrest to prove that it couldn't have been Jeremiah.
Confident that Jeremiah Washington was not involved, the prosecutor indicts Jarrell Young for first-degree murder and armed robbery.
It was a solid case. Darkus could have changed her statement on the stand. What the facts are is her original statement could have been played, and all of the evidence shows that statement to be true.
The trial of Jarrell Young for the murder of Robert LeCompte begins on November 26, 2012.
Darkus and the prosecution team do a really masterly job telling the story of why Darkus changed her story to the defense investigator. Darkus said she was afraid for her life.
Darkus made some allegations that she received threats from Jarrell's family members.
They were telling me that I lied and I put Jarrell in prison for life, and they were gonna beat me up and they was gonna kill me. She was gonna cut my head off.
Jarrell's mother denies that she and her daughter threatened Darkus.
She was the one that started this, but I never threatened Darkus. I didn't threaten Darkus at all.
The prosecution's theory for his motive was that he just needed the money.
If Jarrell wanted the money, all he had to do is say, "Hey, Robert, I'm behind on rent." Robert would have said, "Here, pay me back when you can."
I don't know with 100% certainty what happened that night. I think there's a really good chance that it went down pretty much as the prosecution says it did. That Jarrell was sad and desperate, frustrated with being poor. Maybe he felt that he had been coerced into sex, and he associated Robert, sweet, good-natured Robert, with all of this terrible stuff that had happened to him. And maybe he saw the suspected sexual relationship that they had had with a combination of shame and resentment, and all of his rage at everything that had happened to him just came out in one horrific crime.
Against the advice of his attorney, Jarrell Young takes the stand in his own defense on the final day of the trial.
I have never in my life seen anybody so unhinged as Jarrell Young telling the story of the night of the murder. He was manic. He kept looking over to the jury and insisting to the jury, "Oh no, I could never have done anything like this. I'm a really good guy. Everybody likes me."
I was not involved with Robert's murder at all whatsoever. I had nothing to do with Robert's murder.
And right at the end of his testimony, Jarrell Young said, "When I was a kid, I was stabbed in the eye with a screwdriver." The thought that enters my head when he said that was, Well, now I know why you chose the murder weapon you chose.
It takes the jury just over 1 hour to find Jarrell Young guilty of first-degree murder.
You know, at that point, I was angry. It was horrifying because it's like I raised this child mostly by myself, you know, and he is my child and I love him. I take sleeping medication at night to sleep, and during the daytime, I take other medications to keep me together. I still say that Jarrell didn't do this. None of his DNA was there on the scene, you know? So it's like, what really happened? To me, he knows something, but I don't think he did the murder.
You know what was the most difficult thing? At the trial, DA passed his pictures around, pictures of Robert on the floor at the crime scene. As I wanted to see the pictures, I needed to clear my heart up. How did you leave my boy?
You know, most people in law enforcement get desensitized to a lot of things. We don't see death like most people see death. This case brought back some reality because of the support of his family and his friends.
I was amazed at how many people still smiled at the memory of Robert, even when I came to talk to them about this incredibly gruesome murder. His exuberance and willingness to be out and proud before very many people in the bayou were out and proud were absolutely an inspiration for other people.
Christmas today, it's not the same. I wish I could have told Robert that I hated myself for the way I treated you and didn't understand you, but at the same time I love you because you did forgive me, because I don't think I would have been able to forgive me.